The wind off the cliff has teeth. It bites through my coat, through my skin, straight into the marrow. But I do not feel cold. I do not feel anything except the vibration of the phone in my hand. It is a notification. A live stream. I look down. The screen is bright against the gray afternoon. It is my sister, Chloe. She is holding a champagne flute, laughing, her face flushed and perfect. Behind her, the lakeside manor glows warm and inviting. The caption hits me like a physical blow. Finally got the manor. #blessed. #new chapter. She is toasting to new beginnings. In the venue I paid for. The venue that was supposed to be hosting the reception for my 7-year-old daughter, Hannah, who we buried an hour ago. They aren't mourning. They are partying. They erased her funeral to launch her engagement. I need to know. I am not crazy for feeling this level of rage. Drop a muscle emoji in the comments if you have ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you. Let me know where you are listening from. I did not scream. Screaming implies surprise. And looking at the ledger of my life, this was not a surprise. It was a mathematical inevitability. To understand why I am standing here, freezing and alone, while my family toasts to their own vanity, you have to understand the architecture of our arrangement. For 5 years, I was the silent partner in their lifestyle. On the 1st of every month, I transferred $3,500 to my parents, Christina and William. They called it maintenance fees. They said it was to preserve the lakeside manor, the historic family estate, ensuring it remained in the family for future generations. For Hannah, they sold it to me as an investment in her future, a legacy I was securing with every deposit. I lived in a 600-square-foot apartment on the edge of town. I drove a 10-year-old car. I skipped vacations, dinners out, and new clothes. I funneled every spare cent into a savings account for Hannah's leukemia treatments. When the insurance capped out, I paid cash. When the specialists suggested experimental protocols, I wrote the check. I was the architect of my own deprivation to ensure their comfort. 6 months ago, they came to me with an emergency. They said the manor needed a luxury renovation to maintain its market value. They needed $68,000 immediately. They said it was critical. If we did not do it, the asset would depreciate. I took out a personal loan. I leveraged my credit, my reputation, and my future to hand them that check. I thought I was protecting an asset. I did not realize I was funding a stage. You might ask why. Why does anyone pour resources into a black hole? It is the trap of normalization. When you grow up as the scapegoat, the one designed to carry the load, you are conditioned to believe that love is a transaction. You are taught that belonging has a price tag. You believe that if you just pay enough in money, in obedience, in silence, you will finally purchase your seat at the table. You think you are paying dues, but you are actually paying a ransom. I thought if I kept the manor floating, they would finally see me. I thought I was buying a safety net for my daughter. But the net was an illusion. When Hannah got sick, my parents did not offer to help. They did not visit the hospital. When she cried in pain, my mother told me I was coddling her. She said Hannah was being dramatic, that I was projecting my anxiety onto a child. They dismissed her suffering as noise. But now that she is gone, Christina is posting black and white photos of herself weeping, captioned, "My angel," tagging grief support groups she never joined. She is harvesting sympathy from the tragedy she ignored. She weaponized my daughter's pain for engagement, just like she weaponized my loyalty for cash. I looked down at the phone again. Chloe was spinning around in the kitchen, showing off the new quartz countertops, the ones I paid for. They were not installed to increase the property value for a future sale. They were installed so Chloe could have a perfect backdrop for her engagement announcement. It was not a legacy. It was a Ponzi scheme. And I was the only investor. I drove to the manor. I did not rush. I drove the speed limit. My hands steady on the wheel. My breath even. I was not hyperventilating. I was calculating. I parked down the street, hidden by the overgrown hedges of the neighboring property. I could see the lights blazing from the house. I could hear the music. It was a playlist of upbeat pop songs. The kind designed to make people feel light and celebratory. I did not go in. Not yet. I sat in the car and watched through the window. I saw them. My mother, Christina, was holding court in the living room, a glass of wine in her hand, accepting condolences that looked a lot like congratulations. My father, William, was laughing with a group of men near the fireplace, and Chloe was everywhere, floating from group to group, showing off the ring, accepting gifts. I pulled out my phone and dialed my mother. She answered on the third ring, her voice breathless and distracted. "Sarah, where are you? We were worried you wouldn't make it back for the reception." "Reception?" I asked. My voice calm. "Is that what you are calling it?" "Of course. Honey. It's a celebration of life. We are just trying to keep spirits up. You know Hannah wouldn't want us to be sad. She loved parties." The audacity was breathtaking. Hannah loved parties. Yes. She loved purple balloons and face painting. She did not love champagne towers and networking events for real estate developers. They were erasing her memory in real time, rewriting her as a convenient excuse for their own vanity. And then I saw it. The narcissists, math. I looked at the scene through the window and realized they were not confused. They were not grieving differently. They were balancing an emotional ledger. To them, a funeral is a net loss. It requires energy, sadness, and focus on someone who can no longer provide supply. It is an emotional deficit, but a party, an engagement, that is a net gain. It brings attention, gifts, praise, and status. They looked at the death of my daughter and saw an opportunity cost. They decided that mourning her was too expensive, so they pivoted to a more profitable event. They leveraged the sunk cost of the venue rental my money to maximize their return on investment. They were not monsters in a fairy tale, they were emotional accountants. And they had just decided that my grief was a bad asset. "I will be there soon," I said, and hung up. I watched Chloe accept a large, ribbon-wrapped box. She squealed, performing delight for the camera phone pointed at her face. They thought they had balanced the books. They thought they had successfully converted a tragedy into a triumph. But they had forgotten one variable. They had forgotten who owned the bank. I wiped my face. There were no tears. Just a thin sheen of sweat from the heat blasting in the car. I opened my laptop. It sat on the passenger seat like a loaded weapon. I did not need to check my email. I did not need to consult a calendar. I knew exactly where the files were. I opened the folder, labeled Lakeside Trust. Inside were the PDFs of every document I had managed for the last 5 years. The tax returns, the insurance policies, the maintenance logs, and the loan agreement. The private contract I had forced my parents to sign when I lent them the $68,000. They had laughed when I presented it, calling me officious and uptight. But they had signed it because they wanted the money. I scrolled to Section 4. Paragraph C, the default clause. It was standard legal boilerplate. Or so they thought. In the event the property is used for unauthorized commercial or social events exceeding 50 guests during the repayment period. The lender reserves the right to declare the full balance due immediately. Failure to pay within 24 hours constitutes a forfeit of collateral usage rights. They bad not read it. They had assumed I was their daughter, not their lender. They assumed family meant flexibility. But contracts do not have feelings. I dialed Robert. He answered on the first ring. His voice low and gravelly. He had been a friend of my grandfather. The only person in this town who remembered the manor before it became a stage for my sister's ambition. Robert, I said. It's Sarah. I saw the live stream. He said. I am so sorry. Sarah. It is disgraceful. I am initiating the default clause. I said. My voice did not shake. I want you to file the foreclosure notice immediately. And I want you to call the sheriff. I need an eviction order for unauthorized use of collateral property. There was a pause on the line. A heavy, thoughtful silence. You know what this means. Sarah, Robert said. Once we file this, there is no going back. It is a declaration of war. They declared war when they skipped my daughter's funeral to throw a party. I said, I am just returning fire. Can you do it? I already started drafting the paperwork when I saw the champagne. He said, I will meet you there in 20 minutes with the sheriff. Thank you, Robert. I closed the laptop. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were dry. My face was pale, but set. I did not look like a grieving mother anymore. I looked like a creditor coming to collect a bad debt. I put the car in gear. The engine purred. A low growl of anticipation. It was time to crash the party. I stepped out of the car and walked up the gravel drive. The night air was filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses. Sounds that felt like shrapnel against my skin. I did not knock. I did not ring the bell. I walked straight through the front door, past the shocked caterers, and into the grand living room. The room was packed. My parents were there, holding court. Chloe was in the center, a phone held high on a selfie stick, broadcasting her triumph to the world. She saw me come in. Her eyes widened for a split second. A flicker of panic. But then her influencer training kicked in. She smiled. A bright, artificial beam. And turned the camera toward me. Look who made it, she chirped, rushing over to hug me. It's my sister. We are all just so happy to be together. She tried to pull me into the frame, to use me as a prop in her narrative of family unity. She wanted to show her followers that everything was fine, that I was on board with this desecration. I did not pull away. I looked straight into the camera lens, straight into the eyes of the thousands of strangers watching. Get out, I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a knife. The chatter died instantly. Sarah, don't be dramatic. Chloe laughed. A nervous, high-pitched sound. We are celebrating. Hannah would want us to be happy. Hannah is dead, I said, speaking directly to the live stream. We buried her 3 hours ago. And while I was standing at her grave, you were setting up a champagne tower in the house I paid for. The chat on her screen started moving faster. A blur of shocked emojis and questions. Chloe tried to lower the phone, but I grabbed her wrist, keeping the camera steady. This party is over, I announced. Everyone here is trespassing. This property is collateral for a debt that is now in default. You have 10 minutes to vacate the premises before the sheriff arrives to enforce the eviction. Sarah, my mother shrieked, rushing forward. What are you doing? You are ruining everything. I am not ruining anything, I said, releasing Chloe's wrist. I am repossessing my assets. You skipped my daughter's funeral to throw an engagement party. You used my grief as content. Now get out of my house." Chloe looked down at her phone. The comments were scrolling so fast they were a blur. But the sentiment was clear. The hearts had turned to angry faces. The congratulations had turned to OMG. Is this real? And monster. She had wanted attention. She had wanted to go viral. She just had not realized that the internet loves a villain even more than it loves a bride. "You can't do this." My father sputtered, his face turning red. "We have guests. This is our home." "It isn't your home," I said. "It's mine. And I am evicting you." Robert walked in 5 minutes later, flanked by 2 uniformed sheriff's deputies. The sight of badges and guns in the foyer sucked the oxygen out of the room. The music stopped. The guests, realizing this wasn't a skit or a prank, began to scramble. I watched them flee the caterers, packing up trays of half-eaten appetizers. The DJ unplugging his speakers. The friends who had been drinking my champagne, suddenly remembering urgent appointments elsewhere. In under 10 minutes, the party was just a memory. All that remained were the half-empty glasses, the smell of expensive perfume, and my family, huddled together in the center of the room, like survivors of a shipwreck they had caused. Robert walked over to me. He did not look triumphant. He looked weary. He was holding a thick manila envelope. He guided me away from them, toward the kitchen island where Chloe had been posing just moments before. "The sheriff is handling the trespass warnings," Robert said, his voice low. "But we have a bigger problem. Sarah. Or rather, they do." He opened the envelope and spread 3 documents on the quartz countertop. "I pulled the contractor records for the renovation loan you gave them," he said. "You know, the $68,000 for the structural repairs and the luxury upgrades." I nodded. "The money I borrowed against my future." "Look at the contractor," Robert said, tapping a finger on the invoice. "Apex Renovations, LLC. I don't know them." "Neither does the state licensing board," Robert said. "I ran a search on the business registry while I was waiting for the sheriff. Apex Renovations was incorporated 4 months ago. The registered agent isn't a licensed contractor. It's him." He pointed across the room to Chloe's fiancé, a man named Brad, who was currently trying to console a weeping Chloe. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I stared at the paper. The pieces clicked together with the sickening precision of a loaded gun. There were no structural repairs. There was no rot in the foundation. They had not used my money to fix the house. They had laundered it. They had funneled $68,000 through a shell company to pay for the engagement ring, the designer dress, and this party. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the temperature. They had not just neglected my daughter. They had stolen from her. That money could have paid for palliative care. It could have taken her to the ocean one last time. Instead, it was sparkling on my sister's finger. I picked up the papers. I walked back into the living room. My mother looked up, her mascara running, her face a mask of tragic victimhood. "Sarah, please," she sobbed. "You have made your point. Send the police away. We can work this out as a family." "Family?" I repeated. "This isn't a family matter anymore. Christina, it is a felony." I threw the papers onto the coffee table. They landed with a heavy slap. "Apex Renovations," I said. "Brad's company. The company that billed me $68,000 for work that was never done." Brad's head snapped up. His face went gray. Chloe stopped crying. My father looked from the papers to Brad. And for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "That's wire fraud," I said. "It's embezzlement." And since you all conspired to solicit the loan under false pretenses, it's a conspiracy. Robert estimates you are looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison." The silence in the room was absolute. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. "I don't want to go to jail," Chloe whispered, her voice trembling. "Mom, you said it was fine. You said it was an advance on my inheritance." "Shut up, Chloe," my father roared. "Here are your options," I said, my voice cutting through their panic. Option A: I hand these files to the sheriff standing on the porch. "And we go to the station right now to file charges." My mother let out a strangled sound. Option B: I continued. "You sign the deed. All of it. You sign over 100% of the Lakeside Manor to me. Right now. To settle the debt and the fraud. You leave tonight with nothing but your clothes. And we never speak again." "You can't take our home," my mother wailed. "It's worth 10 times the loan." "Then consider the difference, the price of my silence," I said. "And the price of staying out of a cell." I pulled the quitclaim deed from Robert's folder. I uncapped a pen and set it down next to the fraud evidence. "Tick-tock," I said. My father looked at the sheriff outside the window. He looked at Brad, who was shaking. He looked at me. And he saw that the daughter he thought he could bully was dead. She had died with Hannah. He picked up the pen. His hand shook. But he signed. He passed it to my mother. She wept, creating a scene until the end. But she signed. I took the deed. I checked the signatures. I handed it to Robert. "Get out," I said. The room was silent, save for the sound of my family packing up their shattered illusions. I did not watch them leave. I walked out onto the porch, past the sheriff's deputies, and into the cool night air. The live stream had ended, but the digital footprint remained. Screenshots of Chloe's terrified face, clips of my mother's sobbing confession, the comments section branding them as frauds. It was all out there. Indelible and eternal. They had wanted to be famous. They got their wish. I walked down the gravel drive, away from the house that had been an anchor around my neck for 5 years. I did not look back. The manor was just a building now. A shell. The memories I had cherished, Hannah playing on the lawn, my grandfather reading in the study, were separate from the property. They lived in me. Not in the drywall or the timber. I sold the manor 2 months later. It went to a developer who did not care about the history or the scandal. He just wanted the land. I took the proceeds, every cent, and put it into a trust. Not for me. For the Hannah Foundation. We broke ground on the first playground 6 months after the funeral. It was in a neighborhood on the other side of town. A place where the kids did not have safe spaces to play. It had purple slides and a sensory garden, just like Hannah would have loved. I stood there on opening day, watching children laugh and run. And I felt a lightness I had not felt since before the diagnosis. Caleb was there, standing beside me. He held my hand. A silent anchor in the new life I was building. "She would have loved this," he said. "She does," I said. "This is her legacy. Not a party. Not a house. This." I never spoke to my parents or Chloe again. I blocked their numbers, returned their letters unopened, and deleted the voicemails without listening. I heard through Robert that they moved to a different state, trying to outrun the shame. But you cannot outrun the truth when it is live streamed to the world. As I drove away from the playground, I stopped at the cliffside chapel one last time. It was quiet. Just the wind and the sea. I sat on the bench overlooking the water and took out my phone. I opened the group chat, the one where they had planned the party while I planned a funeral. I scrolled to the bottom. In past the last message I had sent, a picture of the eviction notice. I hit delete. Then, I blocked the numbers. One by one. Christina. William. Chloe. I put the phone down and looked out at the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. And for the first time in a long time, it was mine. Burning a bridge does not just cut you off from where you have been. It ensures you can never go back. And looking at the light on the water, I knew I never wanted to. If you have ever had to burn a bridge to save yourself, share this story. It might be the match someone else needs to light their way out. Don't forget to follow for more stories of truth and resilience.